Mr. Black and Mr. Watson both for their testimony and their service. My question comes back to trying to change the culture in your respective organizations. Mr. Black, in your testimony, you used some interesting words. You said, after September 11th, and I quote, the gloves came off and the hunt was on. Was it extremely difficult to do the hunt and take the gloves off even after the DCI had declared war and even after Osama Bin Laden had declared war on us?
I think there was an evolutionary or escalatory approach to the issue keyed to the intelligence that was acquired and driven. You know, one can recall that Osama Bin Laden essentially came into the 90s as a financier and in some areas a doer of good works that required very close study to be able to concretely identify that he was a supporter of terrorists, a financier of terrorists. By the mid-90s, he became more active, and then, as we know, shortly after that, went to Afghanistan. So what I would say is, yes, that the approach kept pace with the common view at the time that was driven by the intelligence. And as it was not perhaps preemptive, but it was certainly keeping up with the pace of the status of this guy as a threat to the United States.
Let me ask you a question of resources, and I want to keep trying to come back to this a bit. The hunt for Osama bin Laden keeps getting escalated, as you said, but the gloves don't come off until after September 11th. The resource issue is one that you consider to be an important one in your testimony. You say you're overwhelmed. The CTC budget, although we can't talk about numbers, roughly triples during the 1990s. And I just want to know, with regard to resources, you must have felt a great deal of frustration with this. You get a bigger budget, but you still feel like you don't have enough personnel fighting an elusive target. Did you say to the CIA director at that point, did you email him, did you call him on the phone and say to him, we need more resources? And do you have records of this saying to Mr. Tenet, we're overwhelmed. We have to get more resources and more money here, even though this budget's tripled?
When you find yourself in a situation of essentially intelligence war, I'm sorry if I smiled about the idea of documenting, because there's not much time to document in that sense. Communication is informal and verbal because things are moving so quickly at such a high pace. I would say that, without equivocation, the director and I were together on these issues. He had an appreciation of our needs from the resources he had available to him. He gave us as much as he could, and as I indicated in my testimony, that we were able to make it through the years because of his intervention and provision of funds and lobbying for us.
So he tried to fight for as many of these funds, and is maybe one of the reasons why you got a tripling in the CTC budget. Did you go to the White House and OMB and say, we need more? Mm-hmm. We're not getting enough. This is not enough for us. Were they aware that you wanted more resources and more money?
Well, I report through the director, and I believe you may be inviting him to testify. I'm the chief of the Counter-terrorism Center, you know, and I should speak to that level of authority and position. I made my superiors aware, and they were as helpful as possible.
And so you're unaware of the chain above that?
I'm aware of the chain. I just feel...
I'm not. My question, Mr. Black, is did you ever go to Mr. Tenet and say, I asked you for resources, when are you going to find out from the White House or OMB about these requests?
Resources and requests for resources were actively considered, and what I can say is that I personally requested and lobbied for the funds that I thought I needed. You have to understand that compared to most people, that I was very much in the forefront because I was the closest to the problem. So it did require an aspect of interaction and trying to advance that funds actually should go to this area as opposed to the other.